Welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host today, Alex Wilson. Today we're talking about the Giants offense taking a big step forward in 2023, and they're expected to be super dynamic. As we all know, we brought in Darren Waller, Jalen Hyatt, Paris Campbell, getting Sterling Shepard back, Wan'Dale Robinson back, and hopefully the offensive line takes a pretty big step forward. A lot of us are banking on Evan Neal, at least myself. I know that Evan Neal, he's probably the key, the catalyst, the linchpin of this offensive line in terms of the importance of his developmental growth. And the next step, if he can take that big step forward in year two, Daniel Jones is going to benefit. The receivers will benefit. Saquon Barkley will benefit. Everyone's going to benefit. The defense, and a lot is riding on Evan Neal. He probably feels it, probably knows it. But I know that you guys definitely are feeling that as well. But, looking at this offense, kind of want to start off just kind of giving you guys some numbers from last year. The Giants offense obviously took a big step in the right direction, especially in the red zone. They ranked fifth in touchdown conversion rate. We've talked about this in the past. Comparably, in 2021 under Jason Garrett and all the guys, Freddie Kitchens that took over once Garrett was fired, the Giants ranked dead last. They were the worst team in the NFL when it came to touchdown conversion rate in the red zone. Now we're looking at a little bit of a different scenario because they ranked fifth last year, but now the next step, the next kind of layer in the foundation they have to build is getting to the red zone more frequently to improve their overall scoring metrics. And obviously last year we saw kind of an interesting offense that relied heavily on the ground game. The passing game was pretty poor. They didn't really get as much action into it as kind of what they wanted. They only averaged 21.5 points per game, 333.9 yards per game. And as I said, the ground game was really the majority of their production, considering like usually we're looking at like a 30 to 70 split. Like most teams are throwing the ball right now in like the 65 to 70% range instead of like the 50-50. The Giants averaged 148.2 yards on the ground and only 185.7 through the air. Like theoretically speaking, that yardage through the air should be double, if not, sometimes triple what it is on the ground. You'd like to see like 300 yards per game through the air, ideally 250 to 300, and then like 100 to 150 on the ground. So that would be kind of a damn good game if you ask me. But if you're looking at the offense taking a big step forward, the guys that I'm kind of focusing on here, obviously being like Darren Waller's the number one option now in the receiving game. You kind of look at what he brings to this offense, right? Like he dominates up the seams. He's got the speed, the size, the physicality, but he's like a super athlete, right? Darren Waller is objectively probably the most athletic tight end in football. Now, I know he's had some injuries over the past 2 years, and I know he's getting a little bit older, so we have to temper our expectations a little bit. But apparently him and Daniel Jones are really developing some nice chemistry in the athleticism. Everything they wanted to see, they're already seeing, at least in a practice scenario. Now you want to kind of translate that into like live game scenarios during practice, obviously training camp coming up, and then of course preseason, and then you want to see him do it like on the football field. I really do think that kind of combination between Daniel Bellinger and Darren Waller could be something really special. And that's going to add to the kind of dynamic explosiveness of this offense. Because Bellinger, I see as like a really good security blanket. And to be quite frank, like Darren Waller is also capable of that. I think he averaged 5.7 yards after the catch during his best season back in 2020. And that's something that you want to see from him, right? Like his most of his production came from 0 to 9 yards, and then he would catch the ball and take it 5.7 yards extra, something around there. And then I think he had 40 first downs in that range. Like he's a really good security blanket, and he can break tackles. He's fast. He's athletic. You can't really play man coverage against him. And then you have Daniel Bellinger, who has tremendous hands. He had an 80+% catch rate this past season. It doesn't drop the ball very often. That was one of the biggest positives about him coming out of San Diego State. And that's why we loved him so much coming out of college as a late round draft pick. A guy that catches the football, like go figure, like that's an important thing for a receiver. But Daniel Bellinger isn't just a good receiver with a lot of developmental upside. He was kicking ass before he broke his eye socket against the Jaguars. He's also one of the best blockers on this team from the position. He probably is the best run blocker from the tight end spot. So if you're playing a lot of 2 tight end sets, like think about all the things the Giants can do on offense with this type of dynamic kind of duo at tight end. You see a lot of these teams like Travis Kelce's like the tight end for the Chiefs, and like he does everything for them. He blocks, he catches, he does, he runs after the catch, he scores touchdowns. Like Waller's capable of that. He's not a terrible blocker. I say he's probably average, but having that kind of duo, like I'm curious to see how the Giants and Mike Kafka and Brian Dable exercise those 2 guys at the same time, because I feel like you're going to see Darren Waller get a lot of snaps in the slot. We're talking like maybe 30-40% as a kind of the jumbo slot role. maybe like 40 to 50%. It could even be that high. And I think like on the boundary, he could even get 20% of his reps as a like kind of outside receiver. Like he's got that type of physicality against him. And how are you going to stop like the speed that we've added to this team? Like Paris Campbell's got legit 4.3 speed. Jalen Hyatt, some people are saying he was one of the fastest, if not the fastest receiver in this draft class in terms of just game speed, straight line speed. He's going to help blow the top off of defense. And then you have Darius Slayton, who's obviously a burner downfield in those 9 routes and those go routes. So, the crossing concepts, that's where I'm really most excited to see this Giants offense take a big step forward, is just utilizing the crossing concepts, creating confusion. Because when you have crossing concepts, a lot of times these defensive backs have to pass on these assignments. Like when they go across the field, they're trying to pass them on. And then you can start to see like, okay, like are these DBs like, pass them on efficiently? Can you start to take advantage of that, use it as leverage, create confusion? And then once there's confusion, then you can get the play action involved, and you can just open up the entire playbook. Again, all falls back on the offensive line protecting Daniel Jones. But, I really hope that they don't take away Daniel Jones' ability to run the football, and I don't think they will. I think that's a really important part to his game. I don't think he's like Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, where like he could just run around aimlessly and make things happen. I don't think that's his style. I think he's a little bit more of an orchestrated quarterback. Like he's not the type of guy that just you give him the ball, you tell him, like, this is what we're running, like make it happen. Like Daniel Jones needs to have some structure in the offense, I think, which is not a bad thing, right? Like you see guys like Patrick Mahomes, like he can do stuff on the run, but like he's an amazing pocket passer. Josh Allen last year, like he threw a ton of interceptions, and ultimately I feel like Daniel Jones needs to have structure on offense, needs to have a little bit of a pocket. No, he needs to have his, the timing routes down. He's a little bit more of a timing quarterback. I don't think he's the type of guy that's going to run around aimlessly and find a guy 70 yards downfield. Like that's not Daniel Jones's game, and that's okay. Like you build to your players' strengths, and I think Brian Daboll and Kafka have done a pretty damn good job doing just that so far. But I'll say this, right? Like with Daniel Jones, one of his biggest attributes, I think he had over 700 rushing yards last year, is his running game. Like that's a big part of how he gets production. And now if you mix that with a good running game from your running back position, you have Saquon back or whatever might happen there, and then you have a really good receiving core, you have a really good tight end unit, with Waller and Daniel Bellinger, like theoretically speaking, like you're going to have a pretty dynamic offense. And I think that's exciting. Like that's kind of what Sam Acho said. Sometimes he has really bad takes, but other times he has good takes. So like Sam Acho said, year 2 in this offense is going to be extremely dynamic under Brian Daboll. Like we know that Daboll did really good stuff for Buffalo's offense. You hear what they were saying, the fans of Buffalo were saying last year about their offense, saying like, we miss Brian Daboll. Like it's too erratic. There's too many. They're just going for the home run. They're not really running a proper offense. And of course, like it was still high octane, but Josh Allen was throwing picks left and right. And meanwhile, you have Daniel Jones over here who's like not throwing interceptions at all. And his fumbles are way down, and he's navigating the pocket really well. Like the step forward we saw from Daniel Jones makes me believe there's a lot of untapped potential there. It's just about being consistent, trusting the process, and having consistency from everybody else. Like Daniel Jones can't do it alone. Like he can't beat the Eagles alone. He can't beat the Cowboys alone. He needs Evan Neal to step up. He needs the interior of the line to step up. He needs his receivers to step up, make some big plays, make some big catches. And most of all, he needs his guys to stay healthy. Like health has been the Giants' most important variable over the past couple of years in terms of they've just struggled to maintain kind of keeping guys on the football field. And when you are constantly getting injured, Wan'Dale, Shep, this guy, that guy, you lose the ability to develop chemistry between your core pieces. Like Wan'Dale and Daniel Jones, that game that Wan'Dale went down, 100 yards, injured. You're just seeing the fruits of all of that kind of work, that work and that time spent just refining and building chemistry with Daniel Jones. And you have a 100-yard performance, catches 9 of 11 passes, and then bam, he goes down. He's out for a year. You know what I mean? Like that's the type of bad luck the Giants have had in the past. Hopefully changing the turf helps that. Hopefully, the coaching staff or the medical staff, the physical guys there are kind of figuring out what they were doing to cause those MCL injuries that we saw last season, mitigate other like major ligament tears. And hopefully they can reduce those numbers, because that's going to be a big part in the Giants being a good team, is like just staying healthy across the board. This could be both sides of the football. But, I think this offense has a lot of potential. The pieces that we did add are good pieces. Like Isaiah Hodgins, he had immediate chemistry with Daniel Jones. I think he had 4 touchdowns in the first 5 weeks he was on the team, or he was starting, and you saw immediately what he could do. I'm excited to see how he continues to build that chemistry with Daniel Jones and the production that he can offer. Bellinger, Waller's obviously like if Waller ends up producing WR1 numbers with a $4 million cap hit, that will probably go down as one of the most genius moves that Joe Schoen has made like probably in his entire career. Like a 3rd round pick for a player that has a $4 million cap hit and the potential for WR1 numbers hasn't happened yet. But if it does happen, does come to fruition, we got to applaud that man. If it doesn't come to a fruition, it was a worthwhile risk because the downside is not much, right? You can move on after this year with some dead money, but like you don't have to take on a ton of money. And then you can go out and find your WR1. It's not the end of the world. Like you have room to spare. You have like, financial flexibility to work with. But I am super excited to see what they can do, and I want to ask you guys essentially, who do you think is going to stand out? Like what makes this offense more dynamic? What needs to happen? What are the most important variables? I think the offensive line is always going to be the most important one. You see what they did for the Philadelphia Eagles. You saw what it did for Jalen Hurts and his growth and development. Protecting Daniel Jones is number one priority. Getting John Michael Schmitz at center, huge upgrade. I don't think we really truly understand how big of an upgrade that is. Is he going to be great as a rookie? Who knows? Probably not. But even if he's slightly above average to average, it's better than what we've had. Billy Price, John Feliciano guys, god awful. And then JMS has a lot of potential left to tap. So I'm excited to see how he can kind of grow into this offense and become a really nice key piece for us moving forward. But also just the slot receivers. Like we have a ton of slot guys. You look at Paris Campbell, you look at Sterling Shepard, Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt can work out of the slot. Darren Waller is going to be a jumbo slot. It's going to be interesting to see how they kind of feed all these mouths that are really ripe for the opportunity to get more, target share and really just make an impact. And the incentive-laden deals for some of these guys, another really good strategy by Joe Shea in this front office to make sure that these guys have something to work for. These guys have something to work toward. And guys like Paris Campbell trying to leverage it into long-term deals with more guaranteed money. This is exactly the type of situation you want to be in because it fuels the growth of Daniel Jones, but it keeps your salary cap and your roster healthy for the future. You don't lock yourself into bad contracts. And I think that's kind of like the ideal situation that we're facing right now is like, we're good to go for the future. Like if things don't pan out, it's easy to move on. And if they do pan out, you can always extend or replicate that with another player with a similar skill set. So I'm excited to see how this offense continues to develop over the next couple of weeks. We've got training camp coming up, my friends. As always, happy to hear your thoughts below in the YouTube comment section. Make sure to like and subscribe. And I'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants episode.